All right, let's jump in. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're going to take a trip back to the turn of the millennium to see how the world of naval strategy looked. And our guide for this, it's a really fascinating analysis from 1999, written by the Pakistan Navy, all about the unique challenges and roles of smaller navies. It's a masterclass in strategic thinking from a very specific time and a very specific place.
And you really can't talk about naval strategy without starting here. This quote is from Alfred Thayer Mahan, kind of the grandfather of the whole field. For more than 100 years, this one idea, that sea power is key to being a great nation, was the bedrock of naval thought. It's the launchpad for everything we're about to get into. So, here's our game plan. First, we'll nail down what sea power actually means. Then we'll get into the big problem that almost every smaller navy has to deal with. We'll make it real with a case study of the Gulf, as it was seen back in 1999, look at it from a specific regional view, and then zoom back out to cover the three big jobs every navy has. Okay, let's get right into it. To really get inside the head of a naval strategist, you have to start with the big idea that drives every single decision they make, and that idea is sea power. You might think sea power is all about warships with big guns, right? Well, not exactly. According to this 1999 analysis, it's way bigger than that. It's a nation's entire maritime ecosystem. We're talking its commercial shipping fleet, its ports, its shipbuilding industry, and all the skilled people who make it run. It's not just a measure of military might, it's a measure of total national strength on the water. And that brings us to the fundamental problem for, well, most countries on Earth. If you're not a global superpower with a massive fleet, how do you even begin to protect your interests at sea? What's your move when you know you just can't rule all the waves? It really boils down to two core strategies. On one side, you've got sea control. That's the big prize. It's the ability to use a chunk of the ocean like it's your own backyard. But if you can't achieve that, you've got sea denial. And that's the classic strategy of the underdog. The thinking is, okay, if I can't use this area, you can be damn sure I'm going to make it impossible for you to use it either. Now, the way this 1999 document saw the world was pretty clear. It broke navies down into four tiers. At the very top, you had the one and only global navy, the U.S. Navy. A step down were the blue water navies, like the UK and France, that could operate pretty far from home. Then you had strong regional navies, and finally, the biggest group of all, coastal navies, whose main job was just protecting their own waters. And it's in this world, for these navies, that a strategy like sea denial becomes so important. So we've got the theory down. Let's see how it plays out in a real-world scenario from back then. The document puts a huge focus on the Northwest Indian Ocean, especially the Gulf. And in 1999, they saw this region as one of the most critical, and frankly, most dangerous places on the planet. Why so critical? Well, this one number tells you everything you need to know. Back then, it was estimated that 60%, that's 60, of the entire world's crude oil reserves were right there in the Gulf. If you could control the sea lanes in and out of there, you literally had your hand on the world's economic jugular. But it wasn't just about the oil. The whole area was a tangled web of rivalries. You had disputes over islands between Iran and the UAE, the ongoing tensions between Iran and Iraq over waterways, Iraq's claims on Kuwait, and looming over all of it, the much broader Arab-Israeli conflict. It really was a geopolitical powder keg just waiting for a spark. Okay, so with all that tension in the air, let's zoom in and get back to our source material. How did the authors of this document, Pakistan's Navy, see their own role and their own challenges in the middle of all this chaos back in 1999? The analysis spells it out pretty clearly. Geographically, they saw their location right next to that oil choke point as a major strategic card to play. But the challenges were huge: a really long coastline to defend, crucial sea trade to protect, and what they called a focal point of rivalries for a neighborhood. So the goal wasn't global domination. It was to be an adjacent force projection navy, basically to be strong enough to deter any threats right there in their own region. All right, so let's pull back from that specific case and look at the bigger picture again. Because this document argues that no matter who you are or where you are, if you're a smaller navy, you've really got three fundamental jobs to do, and they go way beyond just combat. First up is the diplomatic role. Think about it. When a warship pulls into a foreign port, it's more than just a ship. It's a floating piece of your own country. A simple visit can strengthen alliances, reassure your friends, and send a very clear message to your rivals, all without ever firing a single shot. It's statecraft at sea. Second, you've got the policing role. This is the day in, day out grind. We're talking about protecting your offshore oil rigs and fishing fleets, cracking down on smugglers, enforcing your laws, and heading out for search and rescue missions. It's all about keeping good order and showing you're in charge of your own backyard.
And finally, of course, we get to the role everyone thinks of first, the military role. This is the core business of any Navy. It's preparing for a fight, defending the country from any attack that comes from the sea, and making sure your nation's vital supply lines stay open, especially in a time of war. And all of this leaves us with a really big question, doesn't it? We've just looked at the world through a 1999 lens, a world defined by this choice between sea control and sea denial, by old regional rivalries, and by these three basic jobs of a Navy. So the question for us today is this: how has that all held up? In an age of drones, cyber warfare, and rising new powers, has the fundamental dilemma for the world's smaller navies completely changed? Or is it, at its core, exactly the same?